As a parent, I want my kids to love reading because I love reading and I want to share that experience with them. But not only that, I've heard over and over again that the best way to prepare my kids for kindergarten is to read to them as much as possible. So my wife and I, we fill our kids' shelves with picture books. We go to the library to get more. We even use that handy rule of thumb. Read to your kids for 20 minutes every day. And it's true that reading readiness is really important to our kids' future success. But do you know what's even more important? Math readiness. In fact, I recently read a study that looked at a bunch of different traits of kindergartners, and the trait that was most predictive of future academic success was math readiness when entering kindergarten. More than social and emotional skills, more than attention, more than reading. Math mattered the most. Which, for a parent, is sort of a terrifying thought to consider, because we don't have a rule of thumb for math readiness. We don't have a read 20 minutes every day type of rule. And so most of us have no idea how to help our kids develop a mathematical mindset. I mean, frankly, a lot of adults had a pretty negative experience with math themselves, and they just never really felt like they were math people. And so for them, there's no plan. They're just desperately hoping that their kids somehow turn out to be math people, because otherwise they're in trouble. Well, I'm here to tell you, as a math teacher and a parent, that there is a lot you can do to help your child explore math, whether or not you're a quote-unquote math person. And it doesn't involve flashcards or workbooks or any of the normal things that you traditionally associate with math. All it involves is playing with your kids and talking about the math that comes up naturally. It's legitimately fun. I have 3 simple guidelines to help you and your kids explore the world of math. You might not realize it, but when you ask your kid, do you want to wear the red shirt or the blue one? You're teaching them how to distinguish colors. Likewise, if you ask your kids, do you want 5 grapes or 10? You're giving them an opportunity to reason with numbers. Our kids' lives are rich with the languages of color, size, smell, taste, and texture. We should make sure that they are just as full of the languages of number, shape, and pattern. My favorite time to do this is dinner time. Because in my house at least, dinner time is a war over bites. How many you've had and how many you've still got left. So every night, our dinner table is just full of numbers. Okay, you've got to eat 10 bites. And you've had 6, which is great, but it's taken you 30 minutes. And now my patience is just about at 0. So can we please just have those last 4 bites? It wasn't a big change in my parenting. I just started using numbers whenever they occurred to me. So I'd set a timer for 7 minutes before bath time, or I'd ask my daughter to get me 2 blocks of cheese at the grocery store. And I didn't just do this with numbers. I'd point out circles and rectangles in everyday objects, or I'd notice out loud when I saw a symmetrical design. That way, their day was just saturated with numbers and shapes and patterns. And it doesn't feel like capital M math to them. These ideas just become part of the way that they interpret the world. For many adults, most of their math memories are focused on flashcards and worksheets and timed tests. It seems impossible that math could be playful. But kids, especially little kids, don't come to math with that baggage. In fact, little kids love math. They love searching the world for patterns and showing you how high they can count. And you can extend that sense of playfulness by playing games and activities with your kids that provoke mathematical conversations. In fact, something as simple as using wooden blocks to build a tower can be a really rich mathematical experience, especially if you bring in the language of geometry to talk about round and flat and circle and triangle and rectangle. Board games and card games are a great way to build number sense, and kids love to play them. My son's favorite game is this game called Uncle Wiggily, which is pretty simple. You just pick a card with a number on it, and you go that number of spaces. When we started playing this game, my son could recognize his numbers, but he didn't have a really good sense of how big they were. So sometimes he'd draw a 6 and he'd go 7 spaces or 4 spaces. But over time, as we played, he got better at counting spaces, and then he started realizing new things about numbers. For example, he realized that 12 was a really good card in this game, and 3 was pretty bad. And so I remember one day I went to draw a card and I didn't show it to him. Instead, I just looked at it all sad and I said, "Oh, buddy, I picked a really bad card." Is it a 3? It's lower. Is it a 2? Lower. Is it a 1? And I acted all dejected, but inside I was beaming because I realized over the course of a couple months, he had gone from somebody who didn't know how big numbers were to somebody who was fluently comparing them and looking at greater and less than and all these new mathematical concepts. And at no point did we sit down and have a math lesson. We were just hanging out. The point is, kids already love math. And if you play math with them, you might find out why. Kids ask questions, lots of questions. And usually I answer them. If we're at the zoo and my daughter asks me what that animal is, I tell her it's a giraffe because there's no way for her to know on her own. But if she asks me a math question, like, what's 5 plus 3? I might not answer her. In fact, I usually have a question of my own. My favorite question is, what do you think? Now, I could answer her question and she'd nod and walk away. But if I ask her what she thinks, now we're having a conversation. Because no matter what she says, I already have a follow-up. If she says, I think the answer is 8, I'll ask her, how do you know? And if she says, I think it's 7, I'll ask her, how do you know? Because this part, when they explain their thinking, is when you really get a chance to look inside your kid's head. Maybe they say, I think it's 8 because I have 5 fingers on this hand, and then it's 6, 7, 8. Or maybe they say, I think it's 8 because I'm 5 right now, and in 3 birthdays, I'll be 8 years old. Whatever they answer, it provides you an opportunity to ask another question, to deepen the conversation and get into new territory. But let's say your daughter thinks the answer is 7. Maybe she says something like, I think it's 7 because you start at 5 and then it's 5, 6, 7. Now, instead of correcting her immediately, maybe you could provide her an opportunity to correct herself. Like you get out some blocks or some quarters or something and say, show me. Let's make a group of 5 and a group of 3 and count them up, see what happens. Now, it doesn't matter what you use, blocks or quarters or jelly beans or whatever. You're not the one who's correcting her mistake. She's using math to correct herself. And that is a lesson that she will use for the rest of her life because it shows her that she can understand math on her own. 5 plus 3 equals 8. And it doesn't equal 8 because mom and dad say so. It just does. The more you ask, what do you think and how do you know? The more your kids will take ownership over their own math ideas and want to make new ones. And then they'll really start thinking like a mathematician. I'll have a lot more to say in future videos about all 3 of these rules of thumb. But for now, just remember, use the language of math, play, and focus on questions, not on answers. If you do that, you'll be well on your way to raising kids who see math as a subject that's worthy of exploring and understanding and playing with. And you might even surprise yourself with how much you like it.